Hello and welcome to the Data for Subscriptions podcast, where we focus on everything related to subscription and as a service businesses. I'm your host, Bilal Bonian, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Andrea Pelizzaro, who leads the Connected Services portfolio at Alfa Laval, to the show. Andrea, welcome.
Thank you so much, Bedal. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Great to have you here. Before we get into the meat of today's sessions, why don't we start with you presenting yourself? What do you do at Alfa Laval?
Yeah, so I'm responsible for connected services, which is a portfolio of a solution where data and IoT is the foundation. And it's a portfolio where we basically try to offer to our customer new solution where we have a subscription-based model. And my focus, of course, is within the field of separation. So I'm responsible for connected services within business unit decanters in food and water.
Right, gotcha. So in specific, what you're driving is a transformation between, let's say, traditional one-time sales towards a subscription-based model. What is the primary objective through this transformation now?
Yeah, so I would say to summarize is the capability to create a new business enabler that will give us the opportunity to generate more business in the medium to long term.
Of course, data is at the center of this transformation. Can you talk about how you leverage data, and specifically customer and user data, to support this transformation?
Yes, of course. So first of all, technically speaking, we simply connect our equipment with a very simple device that will collect the data that then will be either visualized through a platform or simply analyzed by dedicated algorithm or intelligence. And then, of course, what we do, which is the key value added on top, is that we translate our separation know-how into this model or algorithm or solution that can solve either a customer issue or provide a specific answer to a customer demand.
Right. And you kind of entered my next question, really, which is, what is the value for the customer? Because obviously, for Alfa Laval, who've been doing successful business for so many years, there is an innate value for the decanters. Now, as you articulate the value for the customers to move from traditional to subscription-based, what is the core of that value for the why should I? If I ask you the question like that?
That's a very good question, actually. So first of all, if you look upon the portfolio and the way that is built, which is composed on a couple of solutions, at the moment, what we offer is the OEM closeness. Basically, the separation intelligence or the support to a customer becomes one click away. So the lead time needed to get up and running again a decanter, it dramatically reduced compared to having a field service engineer going on site, for example. Then, depending on the business model, we could be able to offer a more predictable OPEX, which is, of course, very important for every customer. And then if you look across the entire portfolio, what we would be able to offer is basically uptime, yield, and I would say overall peace of mind for the equipment.
Can you take one of your solutions, just apply that logic now and talk us through basically end to end? So I get this as a customer, and based on what you just explained, such as fasten time to value, predictability of OPEX and so on, and just run us through that solution?
Yes, of course. So one of the solutions that we have is a condition monitoring system that through the help of a dedicated hardware basically will be capable to analyze if there is any specific trend in vibrational speed happening in the components monitored. And then basically we would be able to understand if there is something pointing towards the wrong direction and potentially a failure in the near future. In this case, what the customer is buying into is the peace of mind part, absolutely, and the uptime. Because if we would be able to predict that something will happen in the near future and advise the customer proactively, they could be able to stop the machine up front, do the needed maintenance, and then be up and running again in no time, having faced any consequence of a big failure. And this, of course, have an enormous impact when it comes to the savings on the potential cost generated due to the downtime, but as well at the time to have the machine up and running again. Considering as well as an important aspect for some of our customer, the fact that they would be able to not lose a lot of raw material. So the loss of production becomes minimal in that extent.
Would you say that there is any real appealing value for a customer that's to still retain a traditional, I want to buy everything, own it, and run the responsibility of it, compared to what you just explained in terms of pay for what you consume?
I think it really depends, and maybe this is just my personal opinion, but it depends on the customer that you are dealing with, because you might have a big conglomerate that is geared up to run everything on their own, so they tend to land on the maintenance activity, trying simply to buy, I don't know, spare parts. And do the rest of the activities on their own, or you have a small company which is a family-owned business, which they would prefer to have the OEM coming in the picture. So overall, I would say that the beauty of this solution is the fact that the OEM know-how is something that is always close to the customer and is continuously evolving and at disposal of the customer. While if you buy something, then of course, I mean, you get the value along the way, but then it would be your own responsibility of securing that this becomes usable for the lifetime of the equipment that you own.
And how do you market your new connected services and as a service offerings to the market? Is it primarily through your install base, or going after new customers, or maybe a combination?
I would say that first of all, we are talking about, as we said in the beginning, a totally shift in the business per se, because we don't look after a transactional business, but we hope to establish a long-term relationship with the customer through a subscription-based model. But then, of course, we would be able to attract both the customers that are buying for the first time the equipment, or as well as serve our installed base. So yes, I think we can definitely say that we can serve whatever customer that has or is interested to get an Alfa Laval machine.
So let's come back to the value for money conversation we just had a few minutes ago, because value-based pricing or outcome-based pricing is obviously something many want to achieve, but it's quite difficult. And one of the challenges that I perceived in my conversations with different customers is, how do you find the sweet spot? Because when customers buy a product, they obviously have done that for a while. They know so-called the value that they get. But now as you shift and go, you don't have to buy the product, you just pay for the outcome. How do you solve for that, Andrea? How do you find that sweet spot with customers to price it correctly?
Well, I think it's a very, very long journey at the end of the day, because in most of the cases, you need to take care of the customer that you engage in this. When it comes to understand exactly the value that you would be able to offer, you need to secure that you are talking with a customer where you have a very good relationship with, and that you would be able to really touch upon their problems. Because it's very hard sometimes, especially when you don't have an extensive and fully proven installed base, to convey the value to customer, because they are always looking for a copy and paste. So it means that if my neighbor is using that technology and is successful, then I will buy in. it's very hard to find nowadays a lot of front runner into technologies, because we know that especially in the fields where I am working, we have a lot of conservative customer. But that being said, I think is the capability that we have in order to translate and talk the same language as our customer. It's a paradigm. So our sales colleague, for example, is extremely important that they would be able to convey a clear message to our customer and let them understand exactly what is the value of a specific solution, which goes beyond talking about the natural, let's say, technical specification, because here we are talking about, as we said in the beginning, value-based. So it means that if, for example, we are talking about the downtime of a machine, we should be able to evaluate what is the amount of money involved into having a decanter stop for a couple of days into a specific production plant, and then tell the customer, look, if you're buying into this solution, we would be able to secure that this will not happen, and the cost for it is minimal compared to the cost of the failure that you would have faced otherwise. So I think it's definitely important that you capture the right customer in the first place, that would be able to give you the information, be open to understand exactly where you are pointing at, and then create a proper value proposition, because this has to be extremely clear for customer, especially if they are not into the IT journey or digital transformation, the way that you want to call it already, because that is definitely an important component of the value-based selling.
I understand that. I think you mentioned that already, but we are also dealing with an industry which is fairly conservative. There is also a knowledge gap, you could say, if you compare to software companies or internet-born companies who started at a given time where it's been natural in terms of how you deploy services, how you consume services, and how you basically price for certain consumption patterns. I think industrial players are coming along, but we're dealing with a longer and potentially slower cycle, where the examples that I've seen that are very successful are the ones that are able to simultaneously experiment and test, meaning you have your long-standing relationship and the way that you sold and supported, and then you start to test on the side, if I may call it that. And as you build more confidence, you then shift more and more of the business over to the new business model.
I think it's definitely a good comment.
Let me ask you one final question when it comes to customer value and so on, and that's related to sustainability. How does this transformation that you guys do attach to sustainability, both for you at Alfa Laval as well as for the customers?
Well, I think sustainability overall is one of the key driver that is embedded into the digital transformation journey, because at the end of the day, we would be able to create a lot of efficiencies, not only internally, but as well for the end customer. So it becomes extremely important to try to navigate more and more into the knowledge and understanding of what sustainability is for the customer and for us as a company. If you imagine one of the solutions that we have when we talk about remote troubleshooting, here, I mean, it's extremely clear that sustainability is key, because we will be able to support our customer without the need of having a field service engineer to go on site and physically inspect the machine. Hence, you avoid taking a flight or taking a car. So there's a lot of CO2 emission that will be saved. And this is definitely shared with the customer, because then when you look upon scope 1, 2, and 3, it's definitely a journey where we and the customer are together. So my clear message is that the sustainability is a paradigm into the digital transformation journey that we are facing.
Yeah, there are multiple benefits to when we move towards these digitalized solutions and services. There is one good example that I was part of as well, a company named Grundfos, maybe a company that you know. I'm pretty intrigued by the journey that they've done because of how they describe their machines being born connected with a soft SIM basically in these water purifiers that they have, and how it allows just more robust construction when they build in these water purifiers, which in itself goes back to the actual definition of sustainability, meaning that the machine can sustain for much longer than it can because of the fact that you don't have to open it up, you don't have to add more modules for the connectivity and so on. I think it's an interesting angle that one can find many benefits. Okay, let's jump a bit more into the operational side of things. So the first question I have for you is, what kind of KPIs do you keep track of when it comes to seeing how your digital transformation is progressing?
Yeah, so to go back to one of the example that I made before around sustainability, if we look upon again this capability that we have to perform remote troubleshooting, then of course this becomes one of the key metrics that we use. Because at the end of the day, if we would be able to offer more and more of this session online or remotely, then of course the expectation is that this will increase over time and will give us the capability to understand if we are ahead of schedule or behind schedule into our digital transformation journey. And this is only one of the key metrics that we use, because there are several other in place.
And in particular, when it comes to metrics for measuring data quality, is that something that you work with, and how do you track that?
So when it comes to data quality, we have a specific team in Alfa Laval that is responsible for that. And at the moment, we are gearing up to reinforce even more all the activities related to data quality. So I think it's a journey as the entire digital transformation, and is one of the key pillar of this.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some of your biggest challenges. So a bit more of a rapid fire mode. I'm going to ask you a series of questions here underneath. So the first one is, if we start from a technical and data acquisition standpoint, and that takes us all the way back to how you describe your solutions. What has been your biggest challenge or challenges with regards to that?
I would say that nowadays we are seeing a situation where more and more customers are, let's say, keen to, I would say, maintain data as their own property. So even the data sharing becomes sometimes a little bit more problematic, because then the discussion lands on who owns what. But then on the other hand, I think another important I would say aspect that we need to consider about this wonderful journey is the fact that the cybersecurity threat that everyone talks every day, every hour, every minute, which of course we have some very important cases happening globally, definitely is in the ear of everyone. So sometimes you might face customer where basically they want to have a digital solution, but they are not open to have a device connected in their site, because they are scared of basically opening a door.
Yep.
Which might create
absolutely
specific threat, of course.
No, absolutely. I think cybersecurity is something that has always been on top of our agenda from a digital route perspective, of course, being a company that works with data management and specifically with usage and customer data. But we've certainly seen in the last 2 years that it's going rampantly up. In part, I think it's because of the maturity of industries and business, more and more coming closer to providing as a service subscription services, then it becomes high on their agenda. But in part, for sure, because of the incidents. Personally, I believe that we're only going to see more and more of these. That's very natural as businesses move more towards being digitalized or online based. Of course, the threats increase. But that's also why it's important to kind of work with the right kind of partners that are fortified in the right way, naturally. But let me ask you another question. How many systems and sources of data are you dealing with? Do you have a sense of that? Because this is typically a hugely complicated area where it's like a myriad of systems.
Well, I would say that I'm not able to give a number right now, but I can tell you that we are talking about several sources, because you might consider from the product standpoint that we deal with a lot of different sensors. So every sensor might have several data points embedded in it. But then you can consider as well business data, which are extremely critical to build up additional knowledge and to basically give the additional value on a solution. And here we are talking about ERP data, we are talking about CRM data. So there are several sources that we try to consolidate together and analyze simultaneously.
How do you specifically work with the automation and efficiency of usage data? And potentially, if you also have your views in terms of quality assurance, enrichment, management. But the first part of the question is?
I would say that generally speaking, we try to create a future where we become less and less dependent on human, not to the extent that we want to eliminate our colleague from the picture, but it's more to secure that we can generate efficiencies and focus the time of our people into more value-added activities. So to give you one example, let's say that I have a field service engineer that is currently running on a week basis to 3 customers if I am in the best case scenario. Having a digital solution with an automatized bot, for example, that would be able to give the first line of defense, that will definitely create the opportunity to focus the attention on this person to do the second line of defense, maybe follow up with much more customer along the week, and provide as well a better life for this person, because then he will not need to travel and maybe take a 12-hour flight to a customer site. So we try to balance this and give the opportunity to our people to become more skilled in this front, but as well to have a better life and to optimize the capabilities that we have to work with our customer.
Machine learning and artificial intelligence is very hot right now, more so than ever, really. How do you expect it to impact the data management side of subscription services?
I think it will definitely have an important role. I see that is not something that will become, let's say, in the medium term, like a game changer, because at the end of the day, when you look upon industrial manufacturer, of course, depending on the maturity of the company, we are still facing basically I would say discussion about where do we need to focus our attention, on the base business or try to work on innovation on the more IoT or digital side. And because we are not software-driven companies, but we still have a base business to maintain, we can dedicate up to a certain amount of time into this journey. So it's going to be definitely an important component. It's going to help us a lot, especially when it comes to mature our portfolio and to work with several customers. Because when you have an install base of 1,000 machines, for example, that will become connected, it cannot be one person monitoring all this equipment. You need to rely on a solid machine learning solution that will be able to support you in building a stronger and stronger solution for the customer. So that's the impact that I foresee for the future.
How big of a challenge has internal alignment been at Alfa Laval throughout your journey so far when it comes to shifting your business model?
I would say, and again, take it from the personal perspective rather than the official
Of course.
corporate answer. But in general, when you need to deal with digital transformation and not being, as we said, a software company, there's always an important shift between the way that you do business and the way that you would expect to do business. And this is not only related to the way that you develop the solution, because the cycle becomes shorter and shorter. So if you imagine, for example, a digital solution, you can create a line of code, deploy it and test it within the market in, let's say, 6 months, get some learning in a couple of months, and then you can go back to square zero and decide if you want to launch it fully or or review it. But then you need to cope with the organizations that are basically created to work with a piece of steel, mechanical equipment, and they are tied to processes and logic that are not, let's say, always close to agility. First of all, and you might have a sales force as well that sometimes need to integrate a bit their way of presenting solution. So if they are very tired to describe a decanter from the perspective of specifying some technical detail around, okay, the performance of the machine, the output of the machine, then you are simply asking them to talk with the customer in a totally different manner. And it's not always simple, and you need to work a lot on training and understanding on the best practice that might come from a totally different industry. So it's a very long journey, I would say. And I'm not saying that in Alfa Laval we lack alignment. I think it's the overall picture related to the shift between transactional business and subscription-based model that includes a lot of steps in order to make it live and scale it up.
Absolutely. I think it's a very important point you're raising, that we spent a significant portion of time of our discussion with regards to customers, processes, and tools, and so on, data gathering, data management, usage data, etc. But the cultural aspect and the organization behind it is, I would argue, an equally big challenge, because especially for those companies who've been around, it's the classic saying of the muscle that you built that took you here could also be a challenge as you're shifting, because there will be friction. So managing the internal side is extremely important. In fact, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question in light of that, because when you shift your business towards more of a digital version, there are lots of tools, processes that you've already exemplified that you're working with and you need to do more of. There are tons of purpose-built, let's say, best-in-class software that exists outside of a company. While I observe that especially incumbents, if I may say so, have a tendency to go, no, we will build it ourselves. What's your view on this? Should one be open-minded and go for the best-in-class purpose-built tools and software, or should companies still maintain their own kind of homegrown systems and solutions, build it themselves, basically?
I think it's a very good question, and I would not be able to give you a straight answer to the extent that we say this is the best practice. What I have experienced in my, I would say, ages in the digital transformation, I think it's always important to find a compromise that suits the speed that the company would like to have. So if you look upon a company that is simply looking to get as quick as possible into the market with something that would give them the first kick or the first step to understand how the journey works, it's always good to partner with someone that has already experience. Maybe they don't have the know-how that the company would be able to provide, but they can provide an enabler to you. And then you can add your know-how on top. On the other hand, it's important as well that if you have a more long-term, I would say, scenario that you are dealing with, building something on your own, I would not say that is the best practice, because, as we said, we are an industrial manufacturer. So on the IT side, we might not be strong as an IT company. But still it's important to maintain in-house a certain amount of know-how and ownership. And I would say it really depends on the company and the strategy that they have in place. And then you can find the best approach to it.
Yeah, I think that's a pragmatic answer, Andrea. If I may just add my own two pieces of thoughts building on yours, is it's important to make sure that you grab a hold of tools, software that can harmonize and dock in with your existing environment, especially if you're sitting on a big portion of business installed base that you've had since many, many years, because you want to maintain without disturbing that. At the same time, you need that flexibility so that, for example, a business initiative like yours have the freedom to be able to explore, to be able to drive innovation. And that combination is actually very, very hard. But there are obviously tools out there that can do that. One thing that I've noticed myself is some businesses, especially let's say, the bigger and prouder an organization gets, the more it is that, but we can do this too. Unfortunately, to your own point, it's not where the companies have their primary strengths. And competing with an IT player or a software player obviously creates problems down the road. In fact, sooner than you might think. So we have tons of examples where companies are just outstanding at what they do, but then their subscription initiative starts to suffer for very simple reasons, such as they just don't have the competence, or their data management processes turn out to be quite cumbersome and inefficient. And then it slows down the innovation drive, such as a person like you have, Andrea. All right, so let me round it off with just a few last questions for you. We talked a lot about the customers. Have you perceived the communication and introduction of subscription services at all being a challenge, or have they all just embraced it with open arms? This is fantastic, and they see the value.
Well, it would be a great scenario in which customer always accept what the industrial manufacturer simply offer to them. So I will not say that that this is the case. Of course, we had the challenges around the understanding of why do they need to move beyond the transactional business. But I think there is an important component which I would imagine several manufacturers are considering. At the end of the day, what you want to secure is to have the business today and the business tomorrow. So there are, we call it service agreement. So a framework for which you try to lock the customer into a long-standing relationship, trying to offer, I would say, as much as possible value that they can keep choosing your company. And this is the way that we try to package the subscription-based model, because that's the only way to secure that they would be able to accept a multi-year contract. Otherwise, if you try to say, I'm going to run with a subscription-based model that I will charge you every month, it's only going to be problematic, because the first thing that they will say is that, why do I need to have one person from my end handling an invoice to you to pay this? It becomes more administration rather than optimization and efficiency. So, of course, there are challenges and not every customer is happy with it. But that is where I think it kicks in the capability from the manufacturer to decide, okay, should we simply try to back off from transactional business and work only on subscription, or should we try to be flexible? And that is where I think it's always important to keep an eye on, and of course to try to evolve along the way depending on the customer needs, because we cannot pretend that we would be able to offer since day one the perfect solution where they will always buy in.
Knowing what you know now today, what will be your key advice for somebody who wants to embark on a similar journey like you've done?
Well, there are several lessons learned that came out of the fact that at the end of the day, we need always, I believe, to dare to fail. And here I'm talking about whatever situation in which you present even a simple piece of paper to the customer and they say, look, I don't like it, go back to your office and try to evaluate something different for us. So I think this approach is the best way to deal with such a transformation. Then I would say it's really important to understand since the beginning what are the capabilities that you have in-house and what is to be outsourced. Because at the end of the day, we always try to start from an angle where we say, yeah, it's very easy. We just need to connect and put a pipeline of data in place, and then the magic will happen. That's not true, because there's a lot of ancillaries, processes, and people that have to be, I would say, included into this. So I think it's extremely important to have a clear idea and a plan moving forward if someone would like to start this journey. Then another important aspect would be that we need to come to a point where we try to use partner more and more to work on ecosystem, because at the end of the day, our customer, they don't want to get a different portal. They want to have one single place where they can get access to their machine seamlessly, if it is Alfa Laval, if it is whatever other OEM. So we need to understand what are the I would say the best approach when it comes to communicate with the machine and so on. And again, the partner side is extremely important, because sometimes you cannot get up to speed without an external support, and maybe your partner can gain something from you as well. And then finally, I think it's extremely important that you have in mind your I would say resources, capabilities, because at the end of the day, we can talk about driving a digital transformation, but we need to have an idea on what is the budget that we are considering, what is the investment, and the payback time that we are looking at. If you initiate something so massive with the extent of saying, okay, I will invest the first, I don't know, million, and then let's see how it is. I don't think that this is going to work. It has to be a longer plan where it's very clear the capabilities, and there will be a lot of investment to do upfront, because otherwise it will be almost impossible to start up this journey.
Right. Andrea, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks to you, Berat. It was a pleasure for me as well. And thanks to everyone that is listening to this podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody listening, and see you at the next episode.